Welcome to our It's Game On, Game Meet, a game changer for climate resilience and food security webinar. We would like to say thank you very much for taking your time to have a conversation with us and have this discussion. So with us here, I have colleagues that will be helping us in the background to run the webinar. That is, I have Rudzani, and also I have Tabelo, Henrietta, and Emily, who are on standby, who will be assisting you in case you also have some technical issues. So I will be the moderator for this webinar, and I will also hand over to TK Takawira, who is going to do the facilitation. Then I'll come back to do the closing. So, Rosani, if you could also share the screen so that the people could be seeing this while we are doing the introductions. So the first part, I'm going to introduce AWEI, which is the African Wildlife Economy Institute based here in Stellenbosch, which is a co-host to this webinar. And after that, then I will allow ASSAf to also do the introductions as the main host of the webinar itself. And then thereafter, it will flow straight into the facilitation. TK is going to facilitate the discussion between Dr. Onai, Dr. Tabang, and also Mr. Kent. So thanks everyone for coming. Speaking is Ndlovu Wiseman. I'm the Deputy Director here at Stellenbosch University for the African Wildlife Economy Institute. So we, as the African Wildlife Economy Institute, we are located here at the Faculty of Agri-Sciences. We are primarily focused on the sustainable use of wild species, finding opportunities on how we could restore, maintain, and also manage our landscapes, at the same time delivering the economic value or supporting livelihoods. So today in this topic, we'll be primarily looking at how game meat can be a solution or could be leveraged as part of climate resilience and food security in South Africa and in Africa and beyond. As you are aware, some are here attending the webinar. Game meat value chains or global game meat value chains is one of our flagship projects that we have been working on here at the Institute. But I'm happy to say you are welcome, and we are looking forward to a fruitful conversation. One thing also that I'm going to highlight here is that this is a conversation. We're going to have more discussions as opposed to presentations. So the speakers are just going to give a brief overview about the topic they're focusing on and their specialization. And then thereafter, we will have a conversation that is open to everyone. Should you want to comment, you should be free to raise your hand once this facilitator is given that opportunity. You could also type some of your comments or questions on the chat box. So I will hand over to you, Rudzani, so that the ASSAf can introduce yourself. And then thereafter, TK, I'm not coming back. You can then take over. Thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Wiseman. Prof. Ludidi, over to you.
Okay, good morning, colleagues. I am wondering, should I just speak through it, or do you want me to share? I'm happy to do either.
You can just speak through it, Prof.
Just speak to it. Okay, all right. Thank you so much. Colleagues, welcome to this webinar. As already described on GameIt, and it's actually a question whether game meat can be a game changer for climate resilience and food security. But of course, I believe it already is, but we probably just need to enhance that. And I think the colleagues from AWEI will tell us how to do that. But my role really today is to speak a little bit about ASSAf and the partnership between ASSAf and AWEI. Um, Maybe with that, I would start by speaking to the mandate of the Academy of Science of South Africa, which is ASSAf, which really is to offer evidence-based scientific advice to government and other stakeholders, and also to recognize excellence in scholarly achievements and application of science for societal benefit, and also to encourage the public to develop a genuine interest in science and science education, which we believe as ASSAf will aid in building a more informed society. The mandate is also entrenching the nexus of food, water, land, energy, and climate change um, as a key priority area for ASSAf, specifically during the 2025 to 2030 period. And I think this is understandable based on how important this nexus is for human livelihoods and human survival. Maybe with that, then this leads us to having to speak to you about the ASSAf Forum on Integrated Climate Change, just because of the importance of the nexus that I have just described. The Integrated Climate Change Forum provides a collaborative space where science, policymakers, practitioners, and stakeholders share evidence, and they engage in dialogue and develop solutions for climate change. Essentially, the solutions are meant to either mitigate climate change or to build resilience and adaptation to climate change and its effect. This inclusive approach emphasizes a collective commitment. And when I say collective, really, this speaks to the broader community, so South African community, in the different communities of practice, but also just the academic sphere, government, private sector, and specific, and also the community that ASSAf serves. In line with South Africa's climate commitments, ASSAf seeks to foster interdisciplinary collaboration and inclusive pathways that strengthen climate resilience while promoting equity and sustainable growth. If then we are to talk about the partnership between ASSAf based on the mandate and the different programs that ASSAf has, and the efforts that Africa Wildlife Economy Institute are making towards this effort to deal with the nexus that I have described previously, then one can see that the ASSAf AWEI partnership plays an important role in fostering interdisciplinary discussions on how game meat can contribute to climate resilience and food security. This partnership also combines scientific expertise and practical knowledge on wildlife economies to facilitate evidence-based policy advocacy relating to the role of game meat in climate resilience and food security. So, colleagues, we look forward to an engaging webinar in which all of these aspects are illustrated in detail. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof, for such a wonderful description of what you're doing. Colleagues from the panel and the people that have joined our webinar, my name is Kumbirai Takawira. I'll be chairing this webinar today. I'm part of the AWEI, the African Wildlife Economy Institute. I'm pursuing my I'm doing my I'm pursuing my PhD. I'm second year PhD. I'm focusing on developing a sustainability framework for the African wild game meat value chain. So today, as you're about to start, I'm just going to give our presenters a chance to introduce themselves. Just a minute or 2 minutes, just to give a brief background of what you're doing and what you're going to be focusing on, starting with Kent, followed by Tabang and Dr. Onai. Over to you, Kent.
Thanks, TK. Good morning, everyone. Hi, I'm Kent Buchanan. I'm going to be talking about some of the concepts around climate change and so we can think about how it might link to game meat. I've worked for some years in DFFE working on climate change policy, and now doing a PhD at Stellenbosch looking at climate smart agriculture.
Thank you, TK, and good morning, everyone who is on the call. My name is Tabang Defu, and I work for the Southern African Wildlife College. Wildlife College is a SADC center of specialization in capacity building around natural resource management. And I'm here today because one of the programs that I'm looking after at the college is the Heading Academy Institute, which actually works around rangelands management in the SADC region and looking at how can rangelands be well managed. But on the other hand, I also look after the nature-based economy department here at the college, and we do some of the work with the SADC Secretariat around implementation of the wildlife-based economy strategy. And my interests in these conversations here today is looking at what could be, in this increasingly climate warming and water scarce world, how do we still have, rely on livestock as a system that requires, more food and more human intervention, while there is a well-adapted sector that is wildlife through game that actually does not need that much of intervention. And we're looking at how can we then integrate to see how can we offset some of the pressures from the agricultural sector or the agricultural field to supplement with the what we think is in the horizon in terms of sustainability and utilization from the point of view and of game meat. And those are my interests, and I'm hoping to get to have more interactive discussions with the audience and everyone, with the experts in this field, so that we can align our thinking thereof. Thank you. Thanks, TK.
Oh, good morning. My name is Dr. Mubingi. I'm with the University of Zimbabwe. I'm a dean in the Faculty of Business Management Sciences and Economics. Today, focusing really on food and nutrition security. When we look at game meat, what potential does it have, particularly in communities with regard to food security and nutrition security? And I'm also looking at community enterprises. Why am I talking about food and nutrition security and community enterprises? My current work is in communities, and we basically are looking at the potential of underutilized indigenous resources to develop rural economies. So today, I'll just look at the overview of, I think, game meat as part of the indigenous resources that are underutilized. And I'll use Zimbabwean experiences more. I'm looking forward to this session, and I'm really grateful to be part of the conversation today. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you, presenters, for such a beautiful such beautiful introductions. So without wasting much of our time, I'm just going to give Mr. Kent an opportunity to present, to give us his presentation on what he's focusing today. Then we'll move to Dr. Tabang, then we'll end with Dr. Onai. So I'm just going to give you guys 5 to 7 minutes. If you exceed, we're just going to go to 7 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, hi again. So I'll probably be maybe a little bit briefer. I just wanted to pave a foundation for some concepts we can talk more in depth about. So I put here the definition of climate resilience from the IPCC. So I just wanted to show you that there are key systems that we are part of that we can think about how game meat might impact. So there's the social systems, the economic systems, and the environmental systems. So to what degree can game meat support these in a future where the climate is changing and warming? And what can we do to adapt our society and the environment? So these are just some quick ideas as to what the role of game meat might can contribute to. So there's the social systems, so food availability and nutrition, food security is quite key. There's definitely a cultural aspect to wildlife and game. In the economic sector, there's potential for tourism, for the meat trade, carbon markets, and also I think the key here is that it opens up maybe opportunities in the smallholders in the rural economy, which is in sub-Saharan Africa. That's a key area of needing development, I think, to highlight. And then we're also facing a changing ecosystem. So there's degraded lands, there's bush encroachment issues, there's loss of biodiversity, there's water pollution, water issues. So how can we also intersect game meat and management of game meat to support the environment? And of course, carbon sequestration, I think that's an obvious one as to what can be done to the environment where that contributes to reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
Sorry, Mr. Kent?
Yeah.
Are you projecting your presentation?
Yes. Sorry. Did it? Oh, I didn't click the button. Sorry. Yeah. Thanks, TK. Okay, just a quick brief recap. So climate change is we can talk to climate change in the aspect of climate action, about climate resilience and climate adaptation. So how can we react to a changing climate in the future where the world is warming? And then there's also climate mitigation, which is how do we reduce greenhouse gases? And though sub-Saharan Africa is not a significant contributor of greenhouse gases, I'm posing that there are economic opportunities from this shift, as well as a moral obligation for everyone as part of the world who's part of the Paris Agreement to reduce emissions, which also comes from agriculture, livestock, and systems like that. So climate mitigation refers to the human interventions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to enhance sinks, so carbon sequestration. So when I talk to greenhouse gas emissions, I speak to methane, nitrous oxide, and carbon dioxide, not just methane that we talk about. So this is a busy graphic looking at the system. So I want to just introduce that livestock, game meat, if we look at the two, if we compare the two, that we can see it as part of a much broader system, the rangelands, the veldt, the grasslands, and also the interactions between the flow of carbon mass through from eating to digestion to putting back into the soils, that there's change in land management, there's fire systems, part of this, there's respiration of animals, and also underground in the soils, there's a significant biology happening where the carbon substrates and things move around. So I think this is to consider that, as I say, it's not just methane, there's also nitrous oxide that comes out of the nitrogen elements as part of livestock. And there's also this flux of carbon dioxide between vegetation, animals, and the atmosphere. So there's a much broader system. So the question is really to think about is what can game meat do to improve, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, or what are the trade-offs? Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Kent, for such a brief and wonderful presentation. Colleagues, we're not going to ask questions after each and every speaker, but we're going to allow all of them to do their presentation. And then we can then open opportunities for people to ask questions. So with that being said, I'm going to give Dr. Tabang an opportunity to give us his presentation. So over to you, Dr. Tabang.
Thanks very much, TK and Kent, for that wonderful presentation. I actually do not have a PowerPoint presentation per se, but I just would like to talk around the notes that I've made for this talk. And yeah, and I think we all in a space where we understand that the world population is increasing tremendously, and it is projected through science that the population will reach around 10 million, by 2050, and of which, when we think about food security in the continent, especially in Africa, because that's the most biodiverse continent that we fortunately find ourselves in. We immediately think about livestock. We usually think about expanding agricultural production, but yet the implications to the environment of these activities are really can cause problems, and especially because if we need to expand in terms of agricultural production, it requires of us to now bring in more anthropogenic or human-centered interventions. Like, we require more water, we require more land, we require various types of crops and all of those kind of things. But yet, in Africa, our landscape have supported for 1,000 of years without any human intervention, long before the modern livestock systems were sort of introduced So this actually raises an important and perhaps a very uncomfortable question that, what if the animals or the meat that we get that feed our populations are not the ones that we actually domesticated, but the ones that have always belonged to these landscapes, And as we see, you could see in Mr. Kent's presentation that climate change, as it intensifies through, intense droughts, increasing temperature, and it puts a lot of pressure on our water systems, on our land resources. We must actually start thinking differently about how we want to produce our food. And especially with this, having in mind the exponential increase of the human populations on Earth. So game meat, and maybe even other wildlife-based production system may actually represent one of the most that I would think, in my opinion, is most overlooked, but yet promising opportunity to build climate resilience and sustainable food systems. Because in essence, we know that climate change is here and is here to stay. And what we need to do is to sort of try to, by all means, as the human species, adapt and mitigate so that we can sort of coexist and, and make the effect or the impact of that very much less, So I think my topic today is just about rethinking how food production can be achieved in a changing climate. And we're not saying that no, let's close off the livestock and the agriculture production systems and move into the sustainable utilization through game meat and nature-based value-added products. But we're saying that because there's detriments in both of those scenarios, because if we focus to say let's allow the wild to feed us, we then understand what we need to understand is that as much as this wildlife or game is a renewable resource, it is not something that you can produce in the lab, or something that you can plant and accelerate the amount of production. It is a steady renewable resource. That is, we know, for example, that an impala gives birth once a year, and it means that we need to consider sustainability in everything that we do. So we wouldn't say let's switch everything all over and look at, and if we want to do away with the impacts of agriculture, let's focus only on consumption of game meat and nature-based products. Of course, there's a high global demand for protein. Obviously, with the rising population size and growth, people's diets change. You can think about when the time when actually livestock meat was introduced to the people, and they were like, "There's an era of where it was a revolution within the nutrition space in which people would want to receive protein." But I think we should now start thinking about how can we then offset a bit of that to incorporate the game meat and the nature-based derived products. And simply because for this lot that we're talking about here in terms of game, you really, these animals have been there in the landscape for a long time, and they do not really need, they have adapted to live there. They do not need us. They can survive on various unfavorable conditions. They can But in terms of agriculture and other livestock, and I'm not saying that we should switch, people should now stop doing, continuing producing livestock and all of that. But I think we should really try to strive balance if we really want to sort of mitigate and adapt to climate change. And I'm going to give you an example of some of the policy frameworks and that actually advocate for this kind of intervention or integration to happen, because at the global level, we're speaking about the Global Biodiversity Framework, the Montreal Global Biodiversity Frameworks, that actually speaks that there's put out targets on sustainable utilization of natural resources. And we're speaking about the Nagoya protocols as a derivative of a treaty that comes out of that, to say people need to have access and benefit sharing frameworks to be able to utilize. I mean, we have a lot of, and I'm speaking now from a point of food security. We have a lot of communities living adjacent to protected areas, and some even living within protected areas. Some actually owning land that they actually have what they call criminal property areas, or CPAs in the South African language, or community conservancies in other parts of Africa, like Namibia and Kenya. So I think it is very important for people to understand that, and for me, I feel like consuming something that is just purely in the wild and something that is just had been adapted to survive in this landscape for a long time is the most healthiest thing, because then I don't think we need to now start thinking about what the risks of health. And we're talking today of one health, of the health of the environment, the health of the animals, and the health of the people. And if we consider what people consume and be conscious of that, we will then now start thinking differently about some of the human interventions that we have on the environment. And I think things are starting to move in that direction, from the Nagoya protocols in terms of access and benefit sharing, to the actual, regional, for example, the SADC wildlife-based economy strategy that speaks of people having to utilize sustainably natural resources or genetic resources like game, is one of those recommended objectives within the frameworks to say this is something that can be done. But the most important element in that is that we need to be conscious of how sustainable that is going to be. So it requires a lot of work that still needs to be done around capacitating people to understand that, if my game farm has 20 impalas, I cannot harvest more than 50% of what I have. Just things like your maximum sustainable harvest and maximum sustainable yield, those kind of technical things are very important. But how do you then bring those kind of things into the ordinary communities for them to understand and all of that? And this brings me now to the importance of indigenous knowledge systems and how they used to actually prove, or even today, that they prove that people understand these systems. People understand that there's carrying capacity. People understand sustainability, because people used to consume these products for subsistence, and they would understand, I cannot take this much because I wouldn't have enough in the. So it is not a new thing that we are experiencing. I think we just need to embrace what people on the ground know, the indigenous people and the local communities know about their environment and their lands, to incorporate that into the systems that we're talking about today. And just continuing on the TK, am I over my time now?
Yeah, you have exhausted
I just
the
want to
budget that I
conclude just
allotted
1
for it.
minute.
Okay.
Can I? Sorry, please. So just to say that there is all of these tools in place that are there that would guide us for us to start utilizing resources sustainably. And for example, I'm just going to conclude with the South African game meat strategy that obviously Dr. Wiseman and his team has put a lot of effort into actually putting comments and reviewing those kind of tools that are there for people to understand and to know that we are moving in the direction of sustainable utilization of natural resources. Thanks, TK. Sorry for running over.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Tabang. It was really, really insightful. That's why I was almost tempted to keep quiet, but yeah, for the sake of time, I think we want to give Dr. Onai her chance to let us know what she has today.
Thank you very much. Okay. Right. Thank you very much. So my presentation is focusing on food and nutrition security, community enterprises. The issue is, can we commercialize game meat and in communities? Then I will just quickly look at the current challenges before I say what should be done. And I think the previous speaker has already spoken to some of the areas that I was going to talk to. So I will not waste much time on that. So when we look at game meat and its contribution, first and foremost, we could look at national meat supply or the food systems. Yes, statistics for countries actually differ, but tell you what, game meat, particularly in Africa, already contributes to national meat supply, apart from your beef, your chicken, your pork, your fish. You actually find that game meat already contributes, be they communities or at the national level, in restaurants. When you come to some of our destinations in Zimbabwe, actually Victoria Falls as an example, you will get game meat. Then game meat, I think as already alluded to, is a complementary source of protein, high quality protein, actually essential micronutrients like your iron, your zinc, and vitamin B12 is also known to be leaner meat with lower fat content. So when we talk food and nutrition security, game meat is quite important. And in communities, for some of us that have rural homes, we know that it offers dietary diversification, and particularly for communities that are vulnerable to climate-related crop failures. In Zimbabwe, it actually also helps with coping strategies during food shortages. Communities that are adjacent to wildlife, I think for Zimbabwe, 13% or approximately 13% of our land is actually reserved to wildlife. Communities get game meat, particularly our elephants. We have the largest population, I suppose maybe even in the continent. And game meat is used as coping strategies. And I'll look at rural economic development. For us, there have been several studies regarding market development for game meat. I will not go into this since there are other conversations that will be coming and we could share the statistics. But the potential of wildlife to transform community livelihoods has actually been proven by a program called Communal Areas Management Program for Indigenous Resources. And some of the areas where opportunities exist include tourism and world-based enterprises, wildlife ranching. There are a lot of these in Zimbabwe. Community conservancies, they are game meat processing, game meat value addition, even export markets for certified game products. So yes, there are opportunities for rural economic development through game meat. But there are challenges, obviously, and I will just pick some of the challenges given the time constraints. One of it being wildlife poaching. And there's also issues with illegal hunting. There are issues with market infrastructure for game meat processing. Whilst with other value chains, the infrastructure is developed, we cannot say the same for game meat. And for us, it's like it's a niche sector. And for the communities, this needs to be addressed. Then there is also the issue about balancing commercial utilization with conservation priorities. The previous speaker has already spoken to the need for expert advice, scientific advice when it comes to commercial harvesting. So there is a challenge in terms of balancing these two. So what is it that needs to be done? And I'll also just pick a few. And I think this speaks, first strategy speaks to the role of universities and government working with universities, working with industry. It's about investing in research on sustainable wildlife management models, particularly for our communities. The third is about stimulating community-based wildlife enterprises. How do we develop community-based enterprises? Who do we involve when we are developing these enterprises? What is the role of communities? Here my predecessor, the previous speaker, on use of indigenous knowledge systems. How do we bring in local authorities? How do we bring in community leaders? The third strategy is about supporting game meat value chains in markets. Yes, we could have regulatory frameworks, but do we have the infrastructure? How much is needed, and who should finance these infrastructures? And lastly, I also agree that we need to invest in capacity building the capacity of local communities to be able to understand what commerce is, for them to be able to understand how they should balance commerce with conversation priorities. So I think my minutes are over. Thank you very much, Tagawe.
TK, you're on mute if you're speaking.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Onai, for such a wonderful presentation. And I think now we have received all the presentation from our panelists. So with that being said, colleagues, we are moving straight to questions. So far from the questions that I have, I'm just going to ask one question per each presenter. Then while we're also going to move to the questions that are in the chat box, and if our time permits or allows, we are going to make sure that all the questions are answered. To you, Kent, I have one question for you. Are you ready for my question?
Yes, shoot.
Yeah, so the first question for you, are there opportunities for growth in the game meat production, looking through the climate lenses? Are there opportunities? Are there challenges that are there for the growth of game meat production, but looking at it from the climate lenses?
Yes, thanks, TK. I do see the beginning of a brighter future, of more opportunities for this sector, I think. So indirect support for growing the game meat sector. So the big one, I think everyone knows about, are carbon offsets. So locally in South Africa, at least, there is a carbon tax and there's a carbon budget program that is being legislated. So as part of that, companies can offset 5% of their emissions that they're taxed on through carbon offsets. So that is one aspect that could feed into this. The challenge there is that the methods for carbon markets I don't think they're that mature to include some of the important parts of game meat that contribute to carbon sequestration. There is one recent methodology from Vera. It's called the VM42 for agricultural land management. That is very progressive, and that includes a big program in South Africa that's looking at carbon sequestration through wildlife and livestock. So this is one example of this. So there's also, we're moving into implementing climate change in all our countries in the region, I think. So a just transition is a big concept that is progressing and maturing. So what that means is that countries have to look at policies that will sustainably shift economies from high emitting to low emitting. So one thing that South Africa is looking at is also the regions of coal production from coal mining. How can they shift that land sector into something more sustainable as agriculture or process? So through that, there's funding ultimately, not at the moment, but there will be more growth in that and programs to support more opportunities. And then there's also the existing climate funds that are through the UN system or UNDP, through national funds. We have the Adaptation Fund through SANBI. There's the Green Climate Fund through Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. There's the Global Environment Facility. And then African Union has the African Adaptation Acceleration Program. So there are things that look at that. So I'm giving you a theoretical opportunity for this, but in reality, I think there's many challenges for these, because are these really accessible to the people that need it the most? I don't think so. So it's very expensive to apply for some of these funds. So we have to figure out better systems and better funding mechanisms. But there are, the important thing is, I think, the finance sector, the banks, the things, people are looking at these topics. So this is what has to grow. There's also a few issues around the system has to mature more, let's put it that way. So the one issue is that these carbon programs would require land tenure. So there has to be a permanency idea of like 30 years that the carbon can be assured it'll be in the ground. So that's the idea of permanency. So in the rural areas, there is a challenge with land ownership and deeds in some areas. So there is this aspect, and again, it's the costs, it's the technical capacity. It's is there feasible ways to monitor and report and verify the carbon sequestration in the system? So there's some things that people are looking at and working on, but it's still early. But there is a future to it, I see.
Okay, thank you very much, Kent, for such a very robust and comprehensive answer. So to Dr. Tabang, I think when you were doing your presentation, you indicated something that is very fundamental to the end that in the time past, the wildlife used to regulate itself without human interference, which means that it was probably the survival of the fittest, and they could survive very difficult or horrible climatic conditions. So a question to you is, what if the animals best suited to feed Africa are the ones are not the ones we domesticated, but the ones that have always belonged to these landscapes? I'm not sure if you got my question, Dr. Tabang.
TK, thanks. Yes, I think I got you. I think, and maybe that is, it is sort of a bit rhetorical, but my understanding is that in the past, when we talked about conservation, we did not speak about we were always thinking about the ecology, the protection, and and we practiced that conventional fortress conservation of protection. We did not think about it was not a people-centered conservation. It was more ecological integrity that needs to be protected. And these days, things have changed. And when we speak the language of sustainable use, we speak about utilization, because then now we need to sort of start looking at, we do not have finite carrying capacity to sort of hold the space to have wildlife and humans still thrive and coexist without actually, that's why in parks you have people doing culling, you have people controlling damage causing animals. And that is for the same reason, that the carrying capacity and the amount of naturally occurring food sources are very much limited. And if we look carefully at our the African ecosystem, like you say that wildlife has sort of, or even wild animals have evolved over a long many years, and they thrive these environmental conditions that are actually characterized by, extreme temperatures, extreme rainfalls, and even pressures on diseases. Animals, I'm giving an example with maybe with FMD and all of that. We live in an area now where there is FMD infestation everywhere, but these species are still thriving and living without any, very much minimal or very minimal intervention thereof. So unlike the conventional livestock and many wildlife herbivores are sort of naturally adapted to survive in the native vegetation with minimal water, with fluctuating environmental conditions. And this actually raise an important consideration that, for our future food systems, instead of continuously modifying landscapes and supporting the livestock and the small stock and the cattle's space and the rangelands, of which there is a place for it, but that should not be our only focus. We might ask whether, working with nature or rather against it could actually offer more, sustainable solutions. And this means that the same landscapes that are, that can simultaneously support food production and conservation and rural livelihoods can be used for integration of utilizing game as another alternative source of protein. So in this sense, game or wildlife is not only part of the continent's natural heritage, but it can also represent an underutilized asset in actually building resilient and sustainable protein systems for the future with minimal human intervention thereof.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dabang, for a very comprehensive answer. To Dr. Onai, you indicated something that was of interest to me in terms of now that we are in the era where we are facing high levels not only of food insecurity but also nutritional insecurity, and you indicated that there is need to utilize underutilized food sources, for example, be it the crops and also the game meat can also be categorized as something that has been underutilized in the time past. So the question that I have for you: which regulatory and policy interventions are needed to scale up game meat production as a driver for rural development?
Thank you very much, Takawira. First and foremost, I think it's the regulatory framework itself. I think when you look at wildlife, when you look at game meat, this is restricted. And I think what needs to be done is to, first and foremost, address wildlife rights when it comes to communities. We need to decentralize decision-making. We need locally led initiatives. They do have indigenous knowledge systems, yes, but let's allow communities. I think in a number of African communities, they now say nothing for us without us. So when you make decisions for communities, you need to involve them. But we are also saying, apart from this regulatory framework, when it comes to governance systems, there's need to strengthen them. We know they are, in the Zimbabwean case, it's national parks that is in charge of wildlife. We also have the veterinary services. I think that's government working with parks. We need the governance systems strengthened. We need enforcement, yes, but those that provide services to communities should be available at that level as well. Because if we are to develop, yes, I really feel that when it comes to indigenous resources, they are resilient when it comes to climate change, but we tend to underutilize them. So it's important that we address regulations, we have an enabling policy, but we also strengthen governance systems. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Onai, for such a very robust answer. And always time, I think time is always jealous of us. And I'm tempted to think that the 8 hours working day that we have in these years is very short than the one that I used to have when I was a little bit young. So because of that, I think we're just going to ask another second round of questions, and also as I'll be asking you questions, the panelists, you can also be going through our chat site that you can also prepare to respond to some of the questions that are in the chat box. So coming back to you, Mr. Kent, I want your answers to be very short and brief, so that we can try by all means to respond to all the questions. So when it comes to greenhouse gas emission, like which one, like the livestock production or the wild game meat production, is more problematic to the end that is driving climate change more as compared to the other one? I'm not sure if you're getting me. Like between the game meat production and livestock production, which one emits more greenhouse gases?
Yes, great question. So there needs to be more research on this. There's not a lot. There is a good study done a few years ago from University of Pretoria, looking at estimating some of the emissions from game meat. And I think if we have to convert, it's not just the animal, it's also, if we're looking at the product, which is the meat, if we look at the meat offtake, so the kilograms methane per meat, it looks like some gazelle can be much more efficient in terms of emissions. So we might, if we substitute like kudu or impala for livestock, maybe there'll be a reduction. But generally, I think we can probably be safe to say it's quite comparable. So a buffalo and a cow seem to be comparable. But there's so many factors. It depends on the protein intake, the quality of their feed in the rangeland, etc., etc. But I think a key part of this from a policy perspective, just to make it more complex, is that as we're going to 2050 and have to hit climate targets internationally under the Paris Agreement, we're actually going for a net CO2 net carbon dioxide goal. So methane may not be as important, but it's just something to think about.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kent. Quickly going to Dr. Tabang, we understand that currently we are facing several problems, for example, global warming, water scarcity, and then we now need to start thinking, should we continue focusing on livestock production, which actually excessively use water, or we should transition to game meat production? What's your take on that one, Dr. Tabang?
Hi, TK.
Yes.
Dr. Tawan has left his an agent meeting in his office.
Oh, okay. So probably I will go straight to Dr. Onai. What are the strategies that can be employed to expand game meat production in the communities, while at the same time ensuring that we are not jeopardizing our conservation goals?
Thank you very much, Tagawira. I think I'll be very short with this one. Campfire is given us lessons, particularly in Zimbabwe. When you link economic benefits to conservation, communities will protect wildlife. They will invest in sustainable management in their communities. So for me, the strategy is to ensure that communities get tangible benefits, tangible economic benefits at the household level, at the community level, and they will definitely take care of the land on which they are keeping this wildlife. They will also embark on sustainable harvesting of the animals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Onai, for such a wonderful response. But I think the only challenge that we have definitely is people that will then decide to take everything for themselves. Otherwise, if benefits can trickle down to the household level, we can definitely deal with that. But it's a story for another time. I think I want to quickly go into the chat box and see if our panelists can then try to respond to some of the questions. I think this one, the first one was just let's start with Lydia. Today's discussion has highlighted game meat as a climate resilient protein source, since wildlife species are better adapted to local ecosystems than conventional livestock. However, as policies aim to scale production, how do you rethink intensification? Unfortunately, Dr. Tabang is not with us to respond to this one. Then the next one, game meat is excessively regulated in East Africa, that any efforts to promote the development of the value chain is stifled by the government. So until there is a political will, so that's something that I've been trying to say. But at the end of the day, everything depends on the political will to implement whatever we are proposing from the policy side. So I'm not sure if there is anyone that would want to take this, like the issue of intensification of wild meat production. Like, what are the consequences of that? I'm not sure if you can take it, Mr. Kent or Doctor. Yeah.
Sure, I can put a little spin on from a climate perspective. So intensive grazing has been studied, and it shows from a carbon perspective, it's detrimental. So that adds to degraded land. So if there is going to be management of game meat, it has to be in a manner that is also good for the ecosystem, which can also support higher carbon sequestration. So that is an issue, yes.
Okay. So what about the challenges associated with veterinary disease control regulations and associated movement restrictions? So I'm not quite sure or if our panelists, I think most of these could be directed to Dr. Tabang, that is no longer with us. So it then means that I will then allow anyone to take and probably respond to that from the panelists. And yes, any takers? Yeah, I think these are some of probably 3 or so questions that we.
TK, I can take some of the questions also.
Yes, you can do that, Wise. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, TK, and thanks very much, colleagues. I think I'm seeing a number of questions here also on the chat box. I see one question which is saying, would the game meat not, scaling up of the game meat value chains, will it not curb poaching? I think that's a very excellent question to raise. So one thing that we notice in the game meat sector is that majority of this game happens primarily in the illegal or in the informal side of things. That is, most of the game that is poached primarily for meat. And even studies show this. So therefore, if more meat is poached, more game is poached for meat apart from skins, like those who poach for other reasons other than meat. So it tells you that if there is access, there is an opportunity to deal with poaching. But again, one needs to look more into the dynamics of it. One being, do the communities that live in those areas have access to game meat? The question is yes, no. But the yes is because they are next to the fence. They can always jump and take it, right? And the second thing is, do they have shops and butcheries and formal value chains that distribute the meat to them? Our research has also shown that that is not the case. You find that when I'm based here in Stellenbosch or I'm seated somewhere in Johannesburg or in certain areas, there are butcheries and shops, or sometimes you find it even in formal shops as Woolworths, right? You find this meat. But I go back to the people that stay or live with these animals just along Kruger National Park or in any other reserve or any other private or communal reserve. There is no butcher that sells the meat. But these are the very people, because if you look at the motivations of game eating or why people eat game, it's not primarily because of food or of hunger, but it's primarily because of taste and culture, right? People want it because they like it. Even if they have chicken and goats, some people still want the taste and they are willing to forego and buy it. Some of our studies have shown that people will actually even protect poachers who go into Kruger National Park and bring out the meat to sell to them. So they will even buy it. For example, you can buy half a wattok itself at almost 800 rands. The communities are buying it, meaning they are sacrificing the 800 from buying chicken or fish or any other thing, but wanting that meat which comes from the wild. So it tells you that there is a huge opportunity in the sector to grow these value chains and supply the meat legally, because the failure to deal with legality at that level is the primary driver also of poaching. So yes, there's an opportunity, but can you completely eliminate poaching? I'll certainly not. I don't think that is possible, but you can reduce it significantly looking into the data that we have. I think that will answer that question, but I can also take some at a later stage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Wes, for that comprehensive answer. I think from our panelists, we are left with only about 2 questions that we can, that probably needs to be answered. It I think Welcome Zondo says the presenter highlighted many challenges about upscaling game meat. I would like to know, given that small-scale farmers lack land and even with domestic livestock, it's difficult for them to maintain disease control, improve production, sustainable livelihoods, and the environment. There is lack of information on smallholders. There is lack of information on how smallholders can enter such markets and upskill through this is a moving.
Yeah, I can come in also, TK, to come in. I see there is
Yes.
also a question from Ekta Patel on the model that Game Meat has adopted in South Africa. And she's asking a question if that has affected or has got an impact on zoonotic diseases. We have actually a research that we are currently working on, looking into zoonotic diseases and the disease risks in the game meat industry, particularly in South Africa. So the preliminary results, Lydia is here, who is actually leading the research herself. She can also add. One of the things that we are observing in South Africa is that, yes, the more you are likely to intensify, that is, landscape production of more species trying to provide game meat, that increases the chance of animals living too close to each other. So those who have studied epidemiology and disease movement and transfer will agree with me that once that is created or once that situation happens where animals interact more with each other, then the disease transfer tend to be higher. So these are some of the things that you see emerging. But how do you best manage that is what is important in the South African sector. So South Africa, whilst they are intensifying and increasing the production and having the risks of this disease transfer between between animals by living together, we also have another component of some farmers or some game ranchers combining both livestock and game. So that also creates another layer of disease risks. That is, because you see that most of the farms in South Africa that have been converted into game ranching are people who some of them used to do agriculture, but then the land became barren or it couldn't produce enough anymore. So you simply let it be to regenerate your grass, your trees, and so forth. And then the best thing to keep is just to keep wild animals. So in some of those, they still do both. They will still have a bit of goats and a bit of cattle and some other activities. So that also creates another layer for transmission of diseases. So I was just responding to Hector there to say these are some of the observations that are happening. But I won't preempt the results because there is more to it. So I think as soon as we publish this thesis, we should be able to communicate that more effectively. But these are the basics that link to zoonotic diseases. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wise. Any checkers for Matthew sketch question? I think basically is saying we can't humanly cull or kill wildlife, and if we are to do it in the forest at a large scale, it will raise welfare concerns. So how are we going to ensure the welfare and well-being of wildlife? Like, how do we ensure the welfare of wildlife in terms of with respect to how it's being killed? Any would want to take this one for the people that are based in doing their research along these lines?
Yeah, it seems like there are few checkers, but there could be more questions, I think, on the chat.
Yeah, there's a quite number of questions. I think some people have been trying to also respond. So another question from Justin has the threat of lead poisoning from lead-based ammunition typically used to harvest wildlife been considered. The threat extends to both scavengers of parts of the carcasses discarded and consumers of venison. So I'm pretty sure some of the guys within the AWEI have probably tied on something that has to do with lead poisoning. I'm not sure if Lydia is with us to just give a sort of a response to that.
Is Lydia here? Oh, yes, there she is.
Sorry, TK, can you please repeat the question? I know it's on lead poisoning, and I was trying to read it in. Okay, the threat of lead poisoning from the use. Okay, so I'm currently working on a project that looks into the game meat industry in South Africa, analyzing it using the One Health framework. And in the interviews that I conducted with experts as well as stakeholders within the industry, they did express that they're currently looking into ways of harvesting game with alternative bullets that are not that is not the use of lead. But the feasibility of that happening is not very certain, considering that alternative lead bullets are more expensive. There's also an issue with precision and issues around supply, if there's going to be a continuous supply of that sort of a bullet, those types of bullets. So it's something that's still currently in the talks, but also there's no policies, or rather talks on policies that could maybe potentially push that issue into implementation a lot faster. But yeah, it is quite a concern. I had a meeting as well with other people that have been focusing on research that has to do with vouchers. So they noticed that people don't really have much regard for birds, right? So after they noticed that, and they've also done research that looks into like lead levels in birds and their eggs, they went as further as trying to find out the lead levels in meat samples in different supermarkets in South Africa. And the amounts that they found for one particular shop was actually very alarming. The permissible allowed amount is at least 0.01 milligrams per kg. They found it at 73 milligrams per kg, which is really worrying. And unfortunately, what happens with lead is that the implications of ingesting lead are not precise. It's something that happens maybe to your body over time, which could end up maybe resulting as cancer. So there's definitely a need to have more work that is done in this regard, and more awareness that should be pushed to hunters alike or the industry, so that we can potentially move away from harvesting using lead bullets.
Thank you very much, Lydia, for such a brief and a straightforward response to that. I think we are running out of time, but a question that has been posted specifically to Dr. Onai in the chat box. Can you please elaborate on how the potential of wildlife to transform community livelihood has been proven by the community-based programs such as Campfire? I'm not sure if Dr. Onai is still with us.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Yeah, I had seen. So with Campfire, these projects are in rural districts, 58 of them in Zimbabwe. And the proceeds from hunting are shared with those communities. And the funds from wildlife, be it tourism, be it hunting, are actually being used to fund or to finance rural development projects. So when you get to these districts, they have tangible projects that have been funded from proceeds from wildlife. So basically, that's how Campfire is actually proven that it's possible to transform communities from wildlife. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me see if I can get another question. So from welcome, Zondo.
Oh, sorry. I had seen a question on how we could make game meat less expensive. I think naturally indigenous resources, I'm not sure with the South African experience. In Zimbabwe, traditional crops are more expensive than, our indigenous crops, your finger millet, your sorghum. If you are to buy the meal, it's more expensive. The same with game meat. In a shop, in a butchery, it's more expensive. I think it's about demand and supply. I think that's what economics say. So if we are to produce more, definitely the more the supply, the the other thing is also a marketing gimmick. There are people that believe that the higher the price, the better the product. So I think there are a lot of dynamics in this sector. And it's important that we also even undertake and establish why game meat is more expensive, why indigenous resources themselves are more expensive, and what it is that we could do. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. I see Wise' hand is up and Lydia, so I'll start with Wise, then go to Lydia.
Okay, thanks, TK, and thanks, Dr. Onai. Also reflecting on the opportunity or chance of to make game meat cheaper or affordable, to say the least. Now, it depends on how you want to look into this, because if you look at the current market prices, it depends where you are. If you are in high-end restaurants or tourist areas, which is the marketplace, the prices tend to be a bit higher. So you have higher prices, but depending on the market. So if you go to those markets of tourists, the prices are mostly higher because it's framed around the premium pricing. And people like to eat the organic, have all these healthy benefits. So they are willing to pay for that. But if you want to look into the local markets don't think of it in that context, that they know that it's an important product, it's premium product, and they love the taste, it's cultural, but they are not willing to spend so much. One, for many factors. The living standards, that is a big factor to it. So they are obviously not willing to pay that much. But if you walk around, even if you work in KZN, for example, ASSAf, they sell their meat per kg, it could be around 30, 50 rand, 60 rand. So depending where you buy it. In some areas, it's even more expensive than that. So there isn't really a clear way of saying how to reduce it, but it depends which market you are targeting. So if you are targeting certain markets, you're going to charge higher prices. But if you are targeting local markets or middle class and lower class markets, then that means you'll have to charge prices that are relative to that market. That is price differentiation. So game meat producers and business people in that context will understand how to do price differentiation, because those options are existing even now. Some meat you can buy 40 kgs, 50 rand per kg. Some of them can be more than 100, depending on where you buy it. And again, which meat are we talking about? Are we only talking about plain game? Are we talking about birds? I was in COP15 in Zimbabwe last year. They served us birds and all these things that they harvested from the wetlands of the Ramsar site. And we enjoyed them. Mopani worms, are they all those things part of game meat? Are they part of game meat, when we talk of birds and reptiles. I saw someone here on the chat said we should also be considering reptiles. Yes, they're meat, but is there an opportunity to expand to that? Is the price going to be the same for these species depending on what species you're eating? So that is something that we need to explore. Price differentiation, the type of species that are being focused on. Thank you.
Thank you, Wise. Lydia, I'm just going to give you a minute, then we move to the last segment.
All right, thank you, TK. I just wanted to try and go for Dr. Patel's question, which was asking about the model that has been adopted in South Africa. And this is also, my response is based on my preliminary results to the study that I'm currently doing. One of the biggest challenges that we are seeing in South Africa's game meat sector is that it's currently being regulated by a fragmented governance. So by that, I mean that the industry is sitting across multiple regulatory domains where there is the wildlife management, veterinary services, and food safety systems. And currently, except for the draft regulations that have not yet been enacted, the industry relies on red meat regulations as well as VPNs, veterinary procedural notices, which are really more in line with other forms of red meat. So what happens with that is that it has created inconsistent standards as well as unclear responsibilities within the departments, which eventually leads to uneven implementation of inspection and hygiene systems. Now, your second question was asking about if the risks are higher for zoonotic diseases or transmission when the animals are farmed. I think that the risk is often higher, or it often emerges when there's the harvesting and processing practices are poorly regulated. And this also then leads to meat inspection being as well weak in that regard. So I think that with regards to risk, it's really dependent on how much surveillance is being done, how much inspection is being done, and how much regulatory or veterinary oversight is being done. And that's currently a challenge considering that the industry is very much fragmented.
Thank you very much, Lydia. I will give this time to Dr. Wise to wrap for us.
Okay, thanks, colleagues, and thanks everyone online who joined us for this webinar. And thanks very much, TK, for facilitating this conversation. I could see on the chat box and also listening on the conversation that there is a lot that was discussed and shared as well. Just to quickly reflect that it was also good to hear of the potential that game meat has in terms of climate resilience, looking at the potential for regeneration of the environment, that is adding an opportunity for carbon credits and rewilding and restoration of our landscapes. That is a big takeaway point there. And also summarily looking into how then this could be a reliable food source. Because if we are saying it has a benefit of giving us potential climate resilience, rewilding, that is, for example, I gave an example earlier about the nature of some of the game ranches that we have is previous farmlands, but they became non-productive. So the person let it be. So that means it brings about all these different vegetation, the reptiles, and they start to emerge because you're now keeping wild animals. You don't need to clear much of the bush. So that gives an opportunity for that, which is a base for carbon credits. And then how do you then make this system a food resilient system? We heard from Dr. Onai. We heard also from Dr. Tabang how the communities could access and the opportunities and the barriers that are there in terms of scaling these value meat chains, of which it includes the risk of diseases, the risk of contamination, like for example with lead contamination, looking at the research that Lydia is doing. So I would like to thank everyone for participating in this and for opening this conversation. I wish and hope that it could be an ongoing conversation, see how we can do it in South Africa, we can do it in Zimbabwe, we can do it in the whole of Southern Africa, supporting the Southern African static wildlife-based economy strategy implementation, talks about all these value chains and others. In East Africa also, countries like Tanzania, they already have allowed the trade and utilization of game meat, which is very positive. But there are some countries that are still struggling. They're still at an infantry level, trying to see how they can co-opt this into it. Countries like Kenya and others are still at that stage when they're trying to build up the sector. So you will see throughout the continent that we are all at different levels at which we are benefiting, utilizing, formalizing our game meat value chains for a greater benefit. So without saying much, our time has come to an end, and thank you very much and all the best for the rest of the week. Bye.